Today, we have to talk about a major shift in the Matrix. Something happened on British morning television that has left the royal sycophants absolutely speechless. For years, any time we, the people, coordinated, relentless and vicious media campaign, the critics tried to gaslight us. They called us crazy. They said, "Oh, it's just standard royal scrutiny." They said, "She just needs to learn how the system works." And even more groundbreaking, they actually brought up the term Misogynoir. For those who don't know, Misogynoir is that specific lethal cocktail of racism and sexism targeted directly at black women. And for the first time in front of millions of British viewers, commentators had to sit there and confront the fact that Meghan hasn't just been unpopular with British tabloids, she has been the target of a vicious multi-year hate campaign designed to tear her down. Today, we are dismantling the entire facade. We're breaking down why the British media is suddenly shifting its tone, why the royal institution let this happen in the first place, and why a self-made, intelligent, beautiful woman of colour was such a massive threat to a family that relies entirely on titles rather than actual talent. Grab your drink, settle in, because we are going deep today. Let's go back to the beginning for a second. Think back to 2016 and 2017, when Meghan first entered the royal sphere. There was global excitement. People all over the world, especially young people, people of colour and people who wanted to see a modern monarchy, were thrilled. Here was a woman who was already a successful actress, a global humanitarian, a UN advocate for women's empowerment long before she ever set eyes on Prince Harry. She brought her own table. She didn't need their breadcrumbs. But almost overnight, the narrative flipped. Suddenly, eating avocados was linked to human rights abuses. Holding her baby bump was labelled narcissistic. Walking down the street in a black dress was treated like a crime against the crown. Meanwhile, other royals were getting praise for doing the exact same things. Why? Because the British tabloid industry is built on a business model of cruelty, and Meghan was their ultimate prize. When commentators on morning TV finally used the word misogynoir, they were identifying the exact weapon that has been used against Meghan. When a black woman stands up with confidence, knows her worth, and refuses to shrink herself to make mediocre people comfortable, the system labels her difficult. They call her demanding. They accuse her of being fake or calculated. And let's call out the psychological warfare at play here. Have you ever noticed how the critics are so obsessed with calling Meghan fake? There's a psychological reason for that. Narcissists and deeply insecure people who are incapable of genuine kindness literally cannot comprehend that someone else possesses it. When they see Meghan's genuine warmth, her natural empathy and her effortless charm, it triggers them. Because they live in a world of performance and transaction, they assume her goodness must be an act. So they launched an unhinged, obsessive campaign to convince the world that her kindness was a facade. But the world didn't buy it. We saw right through it. Now, let's talk about the institution itself, the royal machine, and its disgusting complicity in all of this. Because what makes this entire debate so infuriating isn't just that the tabloids attacked Meghan, it's that the palace let them do it. Worse than that, they orchestrated it. The control the royal family holds over the British press is not a conspiracy theory. It is a documented daily transactional relationship known as the royal rota. The palace feeds the press access, photos and leaks, and in exchange the press prints what the palace wants. Look at how the palace handles Prince Andrew. Here is a man entangled in massive, deeply disturbing international scandals. a man whose actions brought global shame upon the monarchy. How did the palace machinery handle him? They deployed every resource they had to shield him. They pulled levers behind the scenes. They used non-disclosure agreements, legal threats, and radio silence to limit the damage. The press suddenly remembered how to exercise restraint when it came to Andrew. So ask yourself this critical question. If the palace had the power to quiet the press for Prince Andrew, why didn't they use that same power to protect a pregnant Meghan who was being relentlessly cyber-bullied and harassed? Because Meghan's suffering was useful to them. Let's state the hard truth that the mainstream media is too terrified to admit. The institution used Meghan as a human shield. She was the ultimate lightning rod. Whenever a bad story came out about Andrew, or whenever questions were raised about William and Kate's astonishingly light workload and lack of work ethic, what did the palace spin doctors do? They threw Meghan to the wolves. They dangled Meghan in front of the tabloid press to keep the hounds distracted. They sacrificed her mental health, her safety, and her peace of mind to protect the reputation of an institution that was crumbling from the inside. It was calculated, it was cold, and it was evil. And here is where the sexism and misogynoir become so blatantly obvious that even British TV anchors couldn't defend it anymore. Prince Harry, a grown adult man, a military veteran who served 2 tours in Afghanistan, a prince of the realm, stands up, sits in front of global cameras, and speaks his truth. Harry looks the world in the eye and explicitly says that his father failed him as a parent, that his brother shoved him to the floor, and that the royal system is corrupt. Harry wrote an entire 400-page memoir detailing his own choices, his own anger, and his own independence. And what do the anti-Harry and Meghan critics do? The very next morning, the headlines scream, "Look what Meghan made him do! Meghan is controlling Harry. Meghan destroyed the family." Are you kidding me? The utter disrespect to Prince Harry's agency is mind-blowing. They treat Harry like he's some mindless puppet who can't think for himself, all because their fragile minds cannot accept that a British prince looked at their precious royal system, realised it was toxic, and voluntarily chose his wife and children over an oppressive monarchy. They refuse to hold Harry accountable for his own words because if they acknowledge that Harry left on his own free will, they have to acknowledge that the system is broken. So instead, they project all their anger onto the self-made American woman of colour. Harry literally stood on a global stage and called out his father's parenting, and yet the tabloids still managed to turn the story into a critique of Meghan's wardrobe or her body language. It is ridiculous. It's transparent, it's lazy, and it's pathetic. Let's talk about the root cause of the royal family's intimidation when it comes to Meghan. Why did her presence shatter their peace so completely? Because Meghan represents something the unroyals have never had to achieve: merit. The Windsor establishment is a system built entirely on inherited privilege. They trade on titles given to them at birth. Their entire status is based on who their parents were, not what they have personally accomplished. They spend their lives cutting ribbons, waving from balconies, and relying on taxpayer funding while claiming birthright as achievement. Then enters Meghan. Meghan is a self-made woman. She put herself through a top university, built a successful acting career on a hit television show, ran a thriving lifestyle brand, became a global advocate for gender equality, and built her own wealth before she ever met Prince Harry. She didn't need the royal family to give her a purpose. She already had one. When a self-made, highly articulate, deeply intelligent woman of colour walked into those dusty palace halls, She held up an uncomfortable mirror to the entire institution. Next to Meghan's drive, talent, and natural charisma, the hollow laziness of the rest of the firm was exposed for the world to see. When your only accomplishment in life is the family tree you were born onto, an accomplished, self-made person standing next to you isn't just intimidating, they are an existential threat. They couldn't control her, they couldn't outshine her, and they couldn't match her work ethic. So, what did they do? They tried to destroy her character. But they failed. Because you cannot erase real substance with cheap tabloid rumours. What yesterday's British TV debate proved is that the narrative is officially collapsing. The public isn't buying the propaganda anymore. People are starting to separate feelings from actual undeniable facts. Look at the lies the anti-Sussex hate machine tried to sell us for years. They tried to tell people that Harry and Meghan gave themselves royal titles. Excuse me? Read a history book. Queen Elizabeth II conferred the titles of Duke and Duchess of Sussex upon them on their wedding day in 2018. That is an absolute historical fact, not a debate. They tried to downplay Harry's achievements, but you cannot erase 2 military deployments, his creation of the world-renowned Invictus Games, and his relentless work for veterans' mental health. They tried to minimize Meghan's achievements, but her record of philanthropy, her podcasts, her business ventures, and her advocacy speak volumes. The critics are running out of material. The line between legitimate journalistic scrutiny and harassment has been crossed for years, and the general public is finally waking up to it. Journalism is supposed to hold power accountable. It is not supposed to serve as a mouthpiece for institutional bullying and racist double standards. When morning television in the UK is forced to stop, look at its audience, and admit that Meghan was subjected to systemic abuse, you know the tide has officially turned. The critics are losing their grip on the narrative, and they are terrified. Family, the truth always wins in the end. Harry and Meghan chose freedom, they chose their family, they chose mental health, and they built a life on their own terms, away from the toxicity. And no matter how many bitter tabloids cry about it, that is the ultimate victory. Now, I want to hear from every single one of you in the comments section down below. What did you think when you saw British TV finally admitting that Meghan was bullied? Do you think the royal family will ever take accountability for their role in this? Let's get a real conversation going. In the comments, keep it sharp, keep it passionate, and keep it respectful. If you love content that defends truth, exposes royal bias, and stands up for Harry and Meghan, do not forget to hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share this video on Twitter, Facebook, and with anyone who needs a reality check on royal reporting. Thank you all so much for your incredible support, your energy, and for building this amazing community with us. Stand strong, stay true, look after yourselves and each other, and I will see you in the very next video. Peace.